Still in 1 Corinthians, the 7th chapter now. And if I look at this chapter myself, and maybe you have a different opinion, but my opinion is it's a systematic approach to marriage. A systematic approach to marriage. And systematic, the definition I'm using is acting according to a fixed plan. Paul, in the 5th and the 6th chapter, addresses fornication, addresses something that is outside of marriage, and it's a sin. And I wonder how much this is addressed in our world. You know, when I was growing up, I fell into it, and I didn't understand all that because I wasn't brought up around the Bible. But when we look at the Bible, it shows us a plan in life. And God wants us to keep that plan. And there's reasons why. For we don't fall into trouble. And we don't get ourselves all messed up. And that's where I was in my life. My life, I can only testify for myself. And maybe if someone else wants to testify their life. The idea that I committed fornication and I did things that my flesh wanted to do without no boundaries on me. You know? But the Bible doesn't, and maybe boundaries is a bad word, but the Bible puts boundaries on us for a purpose. And this letter here, this chapter 7, is addressing those things and giving us the truth about when someone gets married and why they get married and you know, things of that nature. And it's real simple. And when we read this chapter today, let's look at it, how Paul is addressing these people. He's addressing us also. And he's giving us guidelines. And I'm totally amazed at the simplicity of this. And I'm totally amazed how sin and the flesh goes against this. And it did in my life. You know, but this is a good chapter. So let's start off. Tom, if you'd read 1 to 5 for us, we'll talk about this, okay?
Now concerning the things whereof you wrote unto me, it is good for a man not to touch a woman. Nevertheless, to avoid fornication, let every man have his own wife, and let every woman have her own husband. Let the husband render unto the wife due benevolence, and likewise also the wife unto the husband. The wife hath not power of her own body, but the husband. And likewise also the husband hath not power of his own body, but the wife. Defraud ye not one the other, except it be with consent for a time, that ye may give yourselves to fasting and prayer, and come together again, that Satan tempt you not for your incontinency.
A lot there. A lot to be consumed. But I want to look at it the way God looks at it. Not the way we look at it as man. Because when we start looking at the idea of sex and marriage and all those things, we're tainted by the world. We want to look at what God instituted. Go over to Genesis 2:18. And hold Corinthians. We're going back there.
First book of the Bible. First book of the Bible. What? Chapter 2.
Chapter 2, verse 18. And we'll have Ethan read here.
Okay. Chapter 2, 18. My eyes.
Go ahead.
And the Lord God said, "It is not good that the man should be alone. I will make him an helpmeet for him."
You see, this is the way God looks at the man and woman relationship in the world. The devil has perverted it in many different ways, all the way down to man with man and woman with woman is a marriage. That's how perverted it is. But the primary reason why God said this, in my understanding, it is not good that a man should be alone. That it's not good. It says, I will make him a helpmate for him. Go to verse 24. Read there, Ethan.
Therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh.
Okay, this is important. Because when you get married, you're becoming one flesh. This is important. This is the covenant. You become one flesh. And be one flesh, that means that you're not going to stray after another flesh. That's the whole point. When you take the marriage vow, when you take the covenant, you're saying, I'm yours and she is mine, or vice versa. And that's it. You've shut the door to every look out there, every person, everything that would cross your path to make you break that covenant. That's the point. You're sealed. You're sealed until your death do you part. That's how great of a covenant this is. Because what you're saying is you're going to live with that person until death do you part. That's the covenant. And it's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing because now you can get into intimacy and you can live life together on the same page. That's why you young people, you need to realize how important it is to have the same mind with your spouse. If you're starting out a relationship with someone and you're not of the same mind, you're going to fall into trouble. You just are. It's just the way it is. Now, there are certain instances where you can win people over and things of that nature, and we're going to get to that here in a second or in a little bit. But let's start off with what God created. And these two verses represent that very good. Proverbs 18:22. And if anybody wants to comment more on what I'm saying here, please feel free, Tom, or anyone else. Proverbs 18:22. And we'll have Presley read here.
Proverbs 18, chapter 18, verse 22.
Go ahead.
Whoso findeth a wife findeth a good thing, and obtaineth favor of the Lord.
You see how God feels about marriage? It's a good thing. It's a good thing that you find a wife. It's not a perverted thing. Don't let the flesh pervert it. Don't. In other words, sometimes in our world, the attitude is, well, I need to live with this woman before I marry her because I'm trying it out. That's perverted. That's totally perverted. And that's not the way it works. And I fell into that myself. I want you to know that, not that I'm proud about it, but I'm shameful about it. That I wish I didn't do that. But here, God says, whosoever findeth a wife findeth a good thing. It's a good thing. And guess what? You obtain favor with the Lord. Go to Matthew 19, 4-6. Matthew 19, 4-6. Ethan or Nate. You're not going to read? Okay. Tracy.
And he answered and said unto them, Have ye not read that he which made them at the beginning made them male and female? And said, For this cause shall a man leave father and mother, and shall cleave to his wife, and they twain shall be one flesh. Wherefore they are no more twain, but one flesh. What therefore God hath joined together, let not man put asunder.
So God is saying here that this covenant that was spoken of in the beginning of time, when you get married, when you join as one flesh, he said, let no man, what God has joined together, let no man put asunder. Now the argument has been said to us often that, well, God didn't join us together. Well, that statement there is not correct, because marriage is honorable. We're going to read this next scripture in fact, let's go to there. Go to Hebrews 12 or 13:4.
Hebrews chapter 13, that way. Oh.
So the comment is made, well, God didn't really join us together. Well, read here, 13:4. Go ahead, Nancy. It's okay, Mom. All right, go ahead.
Marriage is honorable in all, and the bed undefiled. But whoremongers and adulterers God will judge.
You see, God instituted marriage, so anybody that gets married, whether they're in God or out of God, it doesn't matter, because it's the institution of marriage that God looks at. When you say I do, no matter whatever form of ceremony is happening, and there's all different kinds of ceremony, from the justice of the peace all the way to a church wedding. You see what I'm saying? You're still getting married. That's the point. So when it says, whatsoever God hath joined together, let no man put asunder. In other words, man can't say, you're divorced. I mean, they can, but it doesn't nullify the fact that God had put a stamp of approval upon this marriage. That's what I'm saying. And that's important that we understand that. So you have people out there that said, well, my wife left me and she went off with another man and all those kind of comments. Well, death do you part. That's the covenant. It's death do you part. You got to keep that in focus. It's real simple. Go back over to Matthew, 1 Corinthians 7. Go back to 1 Corinthians 7. So we have established the covenant. We've established that marriage is good. It's not something bad. It's something good. And God is wanting you to do that. He wants to make you happy. He wants to bring in that you're not alone. Those are all good things. And over here in 6 to 9, let's read here. Go ahead. I think it would be Jimmy.
All right. But I speak this by permission and that of commandment. But I should that all men were even as I myself. But every man hath this proper gift of God, and after this manner, and another after that manner. I say therefore to the unmarried and widows, it is good for them if they abide even as I. But if they cannot contain, then let them marry, but it is better to marry than to burn.
Okay. So this is Paul's, how do we say that? He's suggestion. Let's say it that way. Could we say that, Tom? Could we say this as a suggestion?
Yeah, he said he was speaking it by permission and not by commandment.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a command of God, but it was his opinion anyway. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, that's better thing. Opinion. That you should remain unmarried. But I believe according to looking at the scriptures, that Paul at some time was married. That's what I believe. And I could be wrong. But he chose, whether his wife died or whether he doesn't mention it, that could be too, that he never was married. But he was part of the Sanhedrin tribe or the priesthood or whatever they call it. And they were all required to be married. That was the requirement. So that's why I was thinking that he was married. But he chose to give his whole life over to Christ because on the road to Damascus, the Lord said, "You're kicking against me. Why are you doing that?" And he just woke up and said, "Yeah." And he realized that he was killing the church of God. And basically, to me, that made him feel that he was more obligated to carry the gospel. And he felt that obligation from God because I believe that's the way the Lord spoke to him. But in this case, he's just giving a permission or an opinion that I'd rather have you be like me. Well, do we have to be like him? We could be like him in character and still be married, right?
Yeah, but if every Christian were like him, then who would have children to pass it on to?
Well, that's part of the covenant, and we're going to get to that. That's part of the covenant, that we have godly children. If no one was married, there would be no children. There would be no carrying on of the gospel. But if you cannot contain, let them marry, for it is better to marry than to burn. Go over to 1 Timothy 5:14. Now, Paul was speaking in Corinthians. Here's he's speaking in 1 Timothy 5:14. And go ahead. Granite, can you read?
Yeah, I can read. Which one?
Okay, it's 1 Timothy 5:14.
It says 1 Timothy 5:14.
Yep.
So I would have younger widows marry, bear children, manage their households, and give their advisory no occasion for slander.
Okay, in the King James it says, I will therefore that the younger women marry, bear children, guide the house, give none occasion to the adversary to speak reproachfully. For some are already turned aside to Satan. You see, here now he's saying, I want the younger women to marry. That's an important thing. That he's saying that also. Why? Because we need more godly women. We need more godly children. 1 Timothy 4:1-3. And was that it then? Back to Tom? Mm-hmm. Okay. Tom, back to you. 1 Timothy 1:4-1-3.
Now the Spirit speaketh expressly that in the latter times some shall depart from the faith, giving heed to seducing spirits and doctrines of devils, speaking lies in hypocrisy, having their conscience seared with a hot iron, forbidding to marry, and commanding to abstain from meats which God hath created to be received with thanksgiving of them which believe and know the truth.
That's pretty clear, isn't it? You see, there's a group of people out there, or a thought that says forbidding to marry. They forbid to marry. Don't get married. Now, we understand who that is, but it's giving heed to doctrines of devils. That's what that is. So not to get married or to think that you shouldn't get married, and we've spoke about this, Presley, and I'm not pointing it to you, obviously, but it is. When you think about it, the devil could come in and says, no, you can't get married. Don't get married. You see? And we have to be careful. Now, obviously, we want God's will in our life. We want to marry the one God wants us to marry. We want to do the right thing in life, and that's very important. Go back over to Matthew 19, 10 to 12. Matthew 19.
Just to Nancy's point earlier, in the 1800s, there was a group in the eastern part of the United States called the Shakers, and the Shakers didn't believe that it was right to get married. And boy, you could kind of guess how many Shakers there are left today. So it was a religious sect that lasted for a little while, and there might be a couple still around today, but they just faded away because they didn't have children. So. But they thought it was a holy thing to not get married, so they fulfilled the verse you just read in Timothy. There was a doctrine of devils and a seducing spirit that said to them, oh no, if you don't get married, you'll be holier than people who, get married and give into the flesh. You'll be holier than them. And that's a seducing spirit.
Go ahead and read here, Matthew 19, 10 to 12, Ethan.
His disciples say unto him, If the case of the man be so with his wife, it is not good to marry. But he said unto them, All men cannot receive this saying, save they to whom it is given. For there are some eunuchs which were so born from their mother's womb. My page turned. And there are some eunuchs which were made eunuchs of men, and there be eunuchs which have made themselves eunuchs for the kingdom of heaven's sake. He that is able to receive it, let him receive it.
And Paul's an example of a eunuch for the kingdom of heaven's sake. And then he says, he that is able to receive it, let him receive it. That's the way I look at it. And that's important because Jesus isn't even saying that it's not good to be married. It's good to be married. He's saying that. He's saying it's good.
Yeah, and it was in response to them being upset that the option of divorce is taken away.
Which is so crazy. It's like,
we might as well not get married.
Exactly. The thing is like, well, we're starting off with the idea that we're going to get divorced.
Like a prenup.
Wait a minute. Why are you doing that? Why don't you start off your life like saying, I'm entering into this covenant because God wants me to. This is the one, and we're going to go on to heaven together. Right? That's what marriage should be about. It's about you're helping, the helpmate and the helper are together, and they're working together to walk into heaven, to make it through this life. You see, and not be tempted by the flesh, and not be, exposed to those things that the world is so readily have put their arms around. In other words, divorce and remarriage and all those kind of things, right? God is saying, hey, join together and fight the fight. Be an example. We've been married for 33 years or 34 years or whatever it is. And it is what it is. But we want to glorify God. In fact, let me read this here. There's some reason why people get married. Adam Clark said this. He says, in the Jewish constitution, there are some things not only curious, but useful, respecting marriage. There are 4 causes which induce men to marry. 1, impure desires. 2, to get riches. 3, to become honorable. 4, for the glory of God. Those who marry through now this is an opinion. It's not etched in stone, okay? Those who marry through first motive, in other words, impure desires, beget wicked and rebellious children. Those who marry for the sake of riches have the curse of leaving them to others. Those who marry for the sake of aggrandizing, I almost got that, their families shall be diminished. In other words, like Tom was saying, on the opposite side, the Shakers, they didn't marry because they thought it was pure, and now they don't have no children. So people who marry because they want to up their name, in honor, like they get married, the prince marries a princess, that type of thing. It's handed down. It doesn't last. But the last one, those who marry to promote the glory of God, their children shall be holy, and them shall the true church be increased. Now, obviously that is not etched in stone, because there's always an exception. See, but those are good guidelines. What's the motive? Why do you want to get married? The real motive should be that you want to glorify God, so that you can raise children that are going to glorify God, and that they're going to carry on the Church of God doctrine and teaching. And that's important. Okay? Go back over to Corinthians, 7th chapter. Read 10 and 11. I think it's Presley's turn.
And unto the married I command, yet not I, but the Lord, let not the wife depart from her husband. And if she depart, let her remain unmarried, or be reconciled to her husband, and let not the husband put away his wife.
Okay, that's pretty simple instruction, isn't it? Don't put away. Right? It's pretty simple. But now you get men and women and the devil come in and suggest, well, you can't live alone. You've got an abusing husband, and things. Now there's going to be some instruction in that too, but let's just look at this simply. Unto the married I command, yet not I, but the Lord. Let not the wife depart from the husband, and if she depart, let her remain unmarried, and be reconciled to her husband, and let not the husband put away his wife. Turn to Malachi. We read this last Sunday night. Go to Malachi, and we'll restate this.
I'd like to just add, it's really important to emphasize what Paul said here in verse 6. He said, well, I'm speaking this by permission and not commandment. Mm-hmm. And now he clearly makes sure that they understand. He said, unto the married, I command, but not I, but the Lord.
Yeah, that's...
It is so powerful what he's saying. Before he's saying, yeah, kind of my opinion, I'm speaking this by permission. I think, maybe you should stay unmarried. But now I'm going to get down to the nuts and bolts, and I'm telling you that this is what God says. And it's so strong the way he said that there. I command, yet not I, but the Lord. And then he says, what? You can't get divorced, period. It's pretty powerful.
Micah 2:14 and 15 that add to what Tom's saying.
Micah or Malachi?
Malachi, I'm sorry. Malachi. Yeah, duh.
14 what? 1, 14.
2, 14, and 15. All right. Go ahead, and it's Tracy's turn to read.
Yet ye say, wherefore? Because the Lord hath been witness between me and the wife of thy youth, against whom thou hast dealt treacherously. Yet is she thy companion and the wife of thy covenant. And did not he make one? Yet had he the residue of the Spirit. And wherefore one? That he might seek a godly seed. Therefore take heed to your spirit, and let none deal treacherously against the wife of his youth.
Why? Because when you get married, you enter into a not only with the spouse, but with God. I could say maybe this is true. Maybe it's a Trinity. The covenant's a Trinity. When you think about it, because you're acting as one. When you get married, you're supposed to act as one. Not only with you and your spouse, but with God. That is important. And if people who are entering into this marriage covenant would realize that, their ups and downs will become more level playing field when you think about it. Because what happens is you're saying, God, covenant, wife, covenant, man, covenant. We made it all together. This is what we said. We're going to live till death do we part. You understand that? Isn't that good? That's, like we were saying, Tom, that's the commandment of the Lord. That's powerful. And then it goes back on us. It's powerful because we make that covenant. And we're not supposed to deal treacherously with the wife of our youth. And that's important. You see how that works out? Then we go back over to Romans 7:2-3. This will add a little icing on the cake of that covenant. But you're so harsh saying that. You have no love or compassion, right? But look at what Paul says over here, 7, 2, and 3. Go ahead. Whose turn? Jimmy or Nancy? Go ahead.
7, 2, 3.
For the woman which hath an husband is bound by the law to her husband, so long as he liveth. But if the husband be dead, she is loosed from the law of her husband. So then, if while her husband liveth she be married to another man, she shall be called an adulteress. But if her husband be dead, she is free from that law, so that she is no adulteress, though she be married to another man.
Well, my husband, he went off and committed adultery. Doesn't change the fact. You're still married. It doesn't change the fact until you're dead. That's the fact. And it's real simple. God didn't make it complex. Think about it. You make a covenant with somebody, and then they go off and are abusive to you and all that stuff. Is that God's fault? No, it's not. It's your fault, because you should have had the covenant with God and the spouse and your husband. Should have all been one. Now, obviously, there's circumstances that a person could go off and do those things, but it still doesn't change the fact it's death do you part. Doesn't change the fact. And that's where people lose it. Verse 12 to 14. Advice from Paul. Back in 1 Corinthians.
Chapter 7. 1 Corinthians.
It's back here.
Yeah. Verse 47.
Okay. Jimmy, read here for us. 12 to 14.
But to the rest I speak, I the Lord. If any brother hath a wife that believeth not, and he be blessed to dwell with him, let him not put her away. And the woman which hath an husband that believeth not, and if he be pleased to dwell with her, let her not leave him. For the unbelieving husband is sanctified by the wife, and the unbelieving wife is sanctified by the husband. Else were your brethren unclean, but now ye are all holy.
So that just basically saying, you don't have bastard children. That's basically what that's saying. You've stayed to the marriage vow, but he's not believed her. You are, as a woman, or vice versa, and then you have children, and it's not like you have bastard children. That you're not. You're still holding to that covenant, okay? Whether the one isn't in that sense, but that's advice from Paul. And then in 15 to 17. Go ahead, Granite, 15 to 17.
Can you skip me for this one?
Okay, Tom, 15 to...
Cam has joined us.
Cam, 15 to 17.
If you'd like to read.
If you'd like to read.
Yeah, that's fine. I can read.
Okay.
But if the unbelieving partner separates, let it be so. In such cases, the brother or sister is not enslaved. God has called you to peace. For how do you know, wife, whether you will save your husband? Or how do you know, husband, whether you will save your wife? Only let each person lead the life that the Lord has assigned to him, and to which God has called him. This is my rule in all the churches.
So basically, to me, this is saying that you can let them depart, but you can't get remarried. You're not bound to have them stay in your house. And people take this and twist it around and said they're not bound to that marriage no more. That's not true, because what we read before, and Tom points it out in 10, and he said, unto the married, I command you, not I, but the Lord, let not the wife depart from the husband, but if she depart, let her remain unmarried. That's God's commandment. So to turn that around and say, we're not in bondage anymore and we can get married, that's going against what God commanded.
of God's commandment, and this one's still, I think, under him saying his.
Yeah,
not-
it's
not the
advice.
Lord.
Yeah, I would agree.
It's just a way to be able to live peacefully without, like,
Yep.
contention, I suppose.
Yeah, but like Tom pointed out, it says, remain unmarried or be reconciled to the husband, and let not the husband put away the wife. You see, this reconciliation is very important because once you say your vows, it's death do you part. And if your husband or wife goes off and does something that's not good, then you still are trying to win her back by the law of what? Love and forgiveness. That is the highest standard you could live out in your life. And remember this, if you go off and say, well, this person's not coming back, I'm going to go get married. Now you put yourself in the devil's world. Because now what you're saying is you marry someone else and you're living in adultery, which that's the definition. And now the person that you divorced, what if they get saved? And you're married again. You see, in God's eyes, for you to reconcile, you've got to give up that other one. That's another block on the wall that's stopping you from doing the right thing in life. You see how terrible the devil is? That's the way it is. And people out in the world, they're not taught this. When we read the Old Testament and you read about marriage, there's a whole couple, I don't know how many chapters, but there's a whole bunch of different explanations about marriage in there. This is the New Testament section of marriage. That's how I look at this. Paul's laying it out. And he says, don't get yourself caught. Stay with your wife. Pray for your wife or your husband. And get them back. That's the only way you're going to make it into heaven. Because in the works of the flesh, the first work, and I don't know if this has any ramifications or not, is adultery. That's not going to make it into the kingdom of heaven. Now, it probably doesn't mean anything better than any other ones, but it does mean that it's pointed out. Number one, it's adultery. You see, adultery, you're not going into heaven. I don't get it. And if you want to say you are, then you're going against what the scriptures say. And people don't like that. They don't want to hear that.
You know what Clark says?
Go ahead.
He says, he's talking about like people who want to get married because their husband is gone. And he's been gone for a long time. They don't know where he is. He says, if the person have been beyond sea and not heard of for 7 years, it is presumed he may be dead, and marriage has been connived at in such cases. If there be no person to complain, it may be presumed that there is none injured. But I have known instances where even a marriage after 7 years' absence has been very unfortunate, the husband returning at the end of 10 or 12 years, and to his utter distress finding his wife married to another man, and with issue of that marriage. There can be no safety in this case, unless there be absolute certainty of the death of the party in question.
Right. When I married Nancy, I asked her many times, were you ever married before?
She did.
Well, are you
Not even
sure?
for a night.
Are you sure you weren't married? Are you sure you didn't enter into some type of covenant with another man? And I was serious. I was dead serious. I mean, our pastor, he preached so clear that there's no doubt in our minds that the marriage.
You guys asked her more than once?
Yeah.
Just to be
Did
sure.
you believe her the first time?
No.
No. I was making dead sure. Dead sure. I wanted to be sure. 18 to, we read 17, 18 to 19. Go ahead. Who's got it?
It's Tom.
Tom, back to Tom.
Is any man called being circumcised? Let him not become uncircumcised. Is any man called in uncircumcision? Let him not be circumcised. Circumcision is nothing, and uncircumcision is nothing, but the keeping of the commandments of God.
This is important, and that's what you were saying, Tom. This is the commandment of God. So circumcision, uncircumcision, he's just pointing it out. It really doesn't matter. Whatever God called you in, whatever state you were in, whether you were Gentile or Jew, circumcision or uncircumcision, don't change it but follow the commandments of God. That's all he's saying here. You
In
know,
other words, we don't use those words anymore. Basically, he's just saying, if you're a Jew and you get saved, you don't need to become a Gentile.
Right.
If you're a Gentile and you get saved,
Yep.
you don't need to become a Jew. That's not what matters. What matters is keeping the commandments of God.
and then read on, Tom. Go ahead, 20 to 24.
Let every man abide in the same calling wherein he was called. Art thou called being a servant? Care not for it. But if thou mayest be made free, use it rather. For he that is called in the Lord being a servant is the Lord's free man. Likewise also he that is called being free is Christ's servant. You are bought with a price. Be ye not the servants of men. Brethren, let every man wherein he is called therein abide with God.
And again, that's another way of saying abide in God. It's a roundabout way that he's talking, and it's important. Whatever state.
He's pointing out
Yeah.
that outward circumstances don't matter when it comes to spiritual
Exactly.
condition.
Yeah.
In the Roman Empire, there were slaves. When he's talking about servants, he's talking about slaves. And if you get saved as a slave, oh well, you're still saved. If you have the opportunity to be set free, well, do it. He says, take it. But if you don't, that doesn't affect your salvation any. And by the same token, if you're a master, a slave owner, and you get saved, well, you're on equal footing with that slave. You're the Lord's servant. They're the Lord's free man. You're a free man. They're a servant. You're a servant. They're a free man. It's all those outward things don't affect our salvation. That's
Right.
the simple way of what Paul's saying.
Yeah, and the other thing that we could relate this to is if you're married, or if you're with your wife, or if she leaves, you still have to live what? Saved. You don't, when you're not affected by what their decision is. You're affected, but you're not to change your salvation experience. You see, it's the same like with what Tom just said. The slave or the free or the servant or whatever state you're in, you're saved. Stay saved. Don't let things affect you. This divorce and remarriage thing is a big thing in our world. We have people that are in that situation, but you got to stay saved. You got to live saved, and that's important. That's very important. Let's go to 25. Let's go over here to Ethan. 25 to 28.
Now concerning virgins, I have no commandment of the Lord, yet I give my judgment as one that hath obtained mercy of the Lord to be faithful. I suppose therefore that this is good for the present distress. I say that it is good for a man so to be. Art thou bound unto a wife? Seek not to be loosed. Art thou loosed from a wife? Seek not a wife.
So here again, he's stating what he said before, that if you're bound by a wife, then you're not seeking a wife. It's an important understanding that we make. It's death do you part. Simple. Go on.
But, and if thou marry, thou hast not sinned. And if a virgin marry, she hath not sinned. Nevertheless, such shall have trouble in the flesh, but I spare you.
Okay. So basically he's saying we've got this trouble out in the world, that we're living under persecution. And, he's the virgin thing. I'm not sure how it's different than our culture, I think, with different importance to it. Let's just look at it like this. You can get married. Let's just look at it like that instead of going deep into it.
Can I just
Yeah.
add what Paul, I like to try to simplify it.
Right.
And he said, this, again, now I'm giving my opinion here, he says.
Right.
And he said, for the present distress, I think it's good to just stay single. You've got to consider what he's talking about here. He lived in the first century, like you just said, under a time of persecution. And he's saying, look, let's not, get all caught up in should we get married, should we not get married. We've got, a tough world we're living in here.
Right.
And you might just be better off to stay single. You can't take what he said there in that verse and apply it across the centuries. We can't look at today's culture and say, well, I think for the present distress, we better not get married, because that's what Paul said. When he said for the present distress, he was talking about the time I live in, the time he lived in. And so, that's where we have to be careful, like he said, to rightly divide the word of God, to understand what he was saying there. He was saying, hey, while I live here in this culture, in this century, probably a good thing to just stay single. But, we're in the 21st century. We're not under persecution. You can't apply that same thing across the board now.
Right.
I think that's what Clark says too, because I've
Yeah.
read on that, and he says the same thing. They were under a time of persecution, so it was tough. If you were going to get married and have all these dangers, now you have to take care of your spouse and your kids if you have kids. So.
Right. And that's why he says, I suppose, therefore, that maybe, he's real careful what he's saying here. He's not uttering commands. He's just kind of like musing out loud. Well, I suppose, considering the circumstances, it's probably better just to stay single.
Okay, let's go to verse 29 to 33. Go ahead. Who starts? Presley.
But this I say, brethren, the time is short. It remaineth that both they that have wives be as though they had none, and they that weep as though they wept not, and they that rejoice as though they rejoiced not, and they that buy as though they possessed not, and they that use this world as not abusing it, for the fashion of this world passeth away. But I would have you without carefulness. He that is unmarried careth for the things that belong to the Lord, how he may please the Lord. But he that is married careth for the things that are of the world, and how he may please his wife.
So that's what we're talking about here. Tom's saying that also to us, and we're all understanding the facts that no matter what position we are in the time period of this world, we still have to maintain our salvation. It says, work out your salvation with fear and trembling. That's in every time period. Because there's other things that will try to trip us up. And the devil's trying to get us. He's not resting. The devil's not resting. Whether it be persecution or whether it be spiritual persecution or whatever it may be, we still got to care for the things that the Lord wants to do first. That's part of the covenant. And that's important. So you live married or live unmarried, you're still going to have trouble in the flesh. Still going to be there. It doesn't change. And that's why we need to be careful. Verse 34 to 38, Tracy.
There is difference also between a wife and a virgin. The unmarried woman careth for the things of the Lord, that she may be holy both in body and in spirit. But she that is married careth for the things of the world, how she may please her husband. And this I speak for your own profit, not that I may cast a snare upon you, but for that which is comely, and that ye may attend upon the Lord without distraction. But if any man think that he behaveth himself uncomely toward his virgin, if she pass the flower of her age, and needs so require, let him do what he will, he sinneth not, let them marry.
And that was 38?
Oh,
38.
no, my bad.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, he that standeth steadfast in his heart, having no necessity, but hath power over his own will, and hath so decreed in his heart that he will keep his virgin, doeth well. So then he that giveth her in marriage doeth well, but he that giveth her not in marriage doeth better.
Okay. So I look at this real simple, that you need to be wise. And the way that we're wise about how we live our lives according to marriage, either being single or being married, it's really important we understand a simple concept. And I think that's what he's trying to express in Luke 10:38 to 42.
10 what?
Luke 10:38 to 42. Nancy, read here for us. This is the concept I believe that really needs to be understood. Go ahead.
Now it came to pass, as they went, that he entered into a certain village, and a certain woman named Martha received him into her house. And she had a sister called Mary, which also sat at Jesus' feet and heard his word. But Martha was cumbered about much serving, and came to him and said, Lord, dost thou not care that my sister hath left me to serve alone? Bid her therefore that she help me. And Jesus answered and said unto her, Martha, Martha, thou art careful and troubled about many things, but one thing is needful. And Mary hath chosen that good part, which shall not be taken away from her.
Well, that was to do what? You need to sit at the feet of Jesus. And if you do that, that's a good thing. All the things about marriage and all those things will put himself right into the right position. That's what I believe. And I think that's what Paul's trying to say. Nevertheless, he that standeth steadfast in his heart, having no necessity, but the power over his own will, has so decreed in his heart that he will keep the virgin doeth well. It's up to you. So this is important that we understand what Paul's saying in this letter, that he's teaching us what marriage is all about. The covenant we enter into and all that. It's very important. And then he sums it up in verse 39. He says, the wife is bound by the law as long as her husband liveth. But if her husband be dead, she is at liberty to be married to whom she will, only in the Lord. You see, it gets right back to what we were talking about in the beginning, is the covenant that we make with God and our wife is in the Lord. It's very important. What were you going to say? Is there 42?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, I never saw that. But she is happy if she abide after my judgment, and I think also that I have the Spirit of God. So you choose.
Do you think that could also be used to say that if your wife leaves you, you should just be happy because now you can attend to the things of God instead of the things of your wife?
You know, actually, that I've thought of that before, and that hold on, Ma, we're done. Just relax, please. When you think about it, what Paul's instruction was that you should live single, and that was good. That was his instruction. And again, Tom mentioned that, it was the command. It wasn't a commandment, it was a suggestion. But now, like what you said, if your husband or wife leaves you and now you're alone in the Lord, that's okay. Because now you can get closer to God and not have to worry about this world. Because marriage, realistically, and Jesus said it, there's no marriage in heaven. It's just an earthly thing. And it's a good thing. Believe me, it's a good thing. But marriage isn't going to get us to heaven. It's salvation that gets us to heaven. And living for the Lord. So if you're living single, there's nothing wrong with that. It's a good thing. So that's a good thing. Tom, anything else you want to comment on before we close?
No, I think covered everything pretty thoroughly.
Yeah, and when we look at what we've just read, again, I look at this as like this is the Old Testament, or this is the New Testament version of the Old Testament writings on the law. That's the way I look at it. Because there's no other places really, except in the Gospels, the three Gospels speak of divorce and remarriage. Paul in Romans speaks of it, and then in Corinthians. Is there any other place where he speaks of marriage? Maybe in Ephesians, where it says it's a church, uses as an example the church. Those are really the only places that are spoke of.
Revelation of the bride.
The bride, yep, there you go. That's related. So it's a good thing. All right? All right. Any questions? Comments? Anything like that?
The message that should
You
be
got
shared.
to mute who you. Somebody's not muted. Making squeaky noise.
That's me, my apologies.
Okay, that's all right. Making squeaky noises. All right. Well, Tom, you close for us if you would.